Johnny B, addict, 12, 15, 17. This is my story. I grew up. I'm a military brat. I grew up. My father was he was a highly decorated three-tour Vietnam Marine, and it was a very strict household. Um, my father suffered greatly from alcoholism and PTSD, and so I don't want to take away from the love that my parents gave me because they were good parents, and I knew that they loved me. But it was a very strict household, um, and so there were times where I don't know. It's crazy to me because sometimes I got pushed around a little bit. I got knocked around a little bit, but at any time, I never thought that I was actually being abused. Does that makes any sense? But uh, we had uh, we had a loving family, but there was no cheerleading going on. We we didn't talk about emotions. We didn't talk about feelings. Um, Whatever was going on, you stuffed it down and you dealt with it, and that's just the way you did it. You moved on, which I know now is not the best option, but yeah, as far as there was three of us, it was Julie, Jeffrey, and Johnny, and we lost my brother at a young age, um, and that changed a lot of our dynamics when I was about 6 years old. School was tough. I was a hyper kid. I was very tense. I had a lot of issues as far as sitting down in a chair. Uh, I didn't learn like all the other kids did. This is this is in the '80s, so uh, they didn't have Ritalin. Well, maybe they did, but they didn't. They basically just put all of us kids that could not focus and were hyperactive in the same room together. Um, and there was no ADHD. There was none of that shit, man. But I remember my school years as being very difficult for me because I couldn't focus and I wasn't learning like all the other kids were learning. I was just a hyper kid. I still am. I did graduate barely. Yeah, 97. It was it was a dark time, but I barely squeezed by. My first job was actually baling hay. I did most mainly construction jobs when I was a kid. I got in a lot of trouble with the law at a really young age, and so the only jobs that I could get are the ones that this is going to go back for the in the phone book when you went through the yellow pages. I literally would just go through all the construction jobs, like the roofing companies, because anyone that had a record, I couldn't get a job like working at a restaurant for a while. So I would just go and I'd look at all the roofing jobs, and I knew that those guys would hire. They'd hire you over the phone, you know. And so I did a lot of roofing, but my very first job was baling hay for a guy named Cecil. He was this old farmer dude that lived down the way from where I lived, and that job sucked, but he paid me good. Other than that, it was basically roofing, carpentry. I did a lot of restaurant, like washing dishes and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I ran with a crew of gentlemen when I was around 13 or 14, and they were. I always gravitated towards the older crowd. For one, they knew how to party. I wanted to be like them because they knew how to get things, and the guys that I hung out with were pretty well. They were well organized, but the ladies that they hung out with were not ladylike per se, but most of them, the interactions that I had were short, not long lived. So I learned at a young age. I didn't learn what a real relationship was like until I got older. But most of the women that I were with were a lot older than I was. My first alcoholic experience was with my father, and his grandfather, my grandfather, and he gave me my first beer. And I know that after that time frame, I knew that I didn't like the taste of alcohol, but I knew that this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life because it's the way it made me felt, or the way it made me feel. And I remember when I hung out with these guys, I had a guy come up to me and he's like, "Hey, um, what if because I'm a young kid and I can't get alcohol. I can't carry it with me because what am I going to do? I can't bring a whole six pack to school." Guy comes up to me. He goes, "Hey man," he goes, "You like to party?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, what if I told you that I could give you something that works just as good as alcohol? You can't smell it on your breath. You could keep a week's supply of it in your pocket. I don't even know what this dude's talking about, but I'm like, fucking sign me up. And he introduced me to what they used to call crank, the peanut butter. And so that was, I was already, I was always a real tight knit, tense kid, and that was not a good option for me. Uh, I mean, I was the kid. Once I started doing that, it was all or nothing, and I was the dude that like I remember pulling up to a gas station, and my buddy would like go in to grab a soda, and he'd come out, and I had like his radio apart, dude. It was so bad. Uh, and then he's like, "Oh well, because I knew right away the people that were doing that for like years were like, I mean, these guys were pros. They've been doing it for decades. They're like, dude, you need to cool it. Like you're doing way too much." And so they introduced me to heroin, and my whole entire world changed. Heroin was the type of thing that it brought me down to this cruise control mode, and it was the most incredible thing. My shoulders loosened up. I was able to focus. I was able to sit in class. And that was my jam. I knew it. I knew from that moment on, like, this is the magic that I've been waiting for. And it was the most incredible thing. And that's always been my drug of choice, has been heroin, all forms of it. Uh, I didn't, it went very quickly from, I dabbed into all kinds of things, but as the years went on, the opioid was definitely where I wanted that release. I wanted that was my best friend, you know. Everywhere I went, it came with me. Heroin always did for me what I cannot do for myself. We talk, in the rooms of recovery, there's so many elements to it. I got into IV use. It took me a while to get there, but I started shooting heroin around the age of 15 or 16. And some things in my life started to get grim. And the guys that I ran with that I thought were highly organized, their transportation methods were a little sloppy. So that's when I fell into the juvenile court system. Um, and the craziest thing is that I was I, I was such an addict we got busted at our place of employment, and they brought me to this juvenile court judge. I did like a 30-day stint in juvie, and I remember standing there in front of the judge, and the judge he was going to put me away for some time, and I was really scared, really scared. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is it. I'm going to put it down. I'm not going to do it again. I'm going to keep going to school. I'm going to, go to college. I had all these major plans in my life. I was like, from this moment on, I'm never going to do this again. And I think about that time, and I look back on that, and I remember everything in my body, meaning that, like, I really wanted to do that. I meant it with everything in me. I got fucking loaded the day I got out. The day I got out. People are like, I see people come in and they get their court signed, and I've seen people actually completely change their lives because they got locked up or they lost their kids. I'm not that smart. I got loaded the day I got out, and I couldn't stop. And I kept doing it. I kept doing it through the loss of my really good friend who I introduced to shooting heroin. And those are, there's so many other instances in my life through that whole addiction that I did a lot of things that I'm not good. I'm not proud of, um, and those things that I had to make right that I didn't think I could make right, because when you come in as an addict and, 25 or 30 years deep, it's like you have all this guilt and shame, and it's hard to get rid of that. But I did a lot of work around that, and it's freeing. But I do believe that if you're listening to this and there's no way out, and you have no other place to go, and there's no more good ideas or no more good plans, and you are at the end of your rope. I didn't know it, but I was at that exact moment, and I hate to say it, but it's an incredible place to be, because then you have nowhere else to go. And if that's the case, you dig in, right? I dug in when I got here. Tell me what you want me to do. I don't give a fuck. You know what I mean? You want me to go to 7 meetings a day? I did everything they asked me to do when I got here, because I was done. I was completely done. I wasn't the guy that like went out, for a couple of weeks, and then came back. So backing up to that time frame when I got low, when I got out, it was the first time that I actually came to the rooms of recovery. And people were, God damn it, they bugged me. Sober people, man, they fucking freaked me out. I did not like clean and sober people. They were all, I'd come to these meetings and they were smiling and they were grateful. And I'm just like, dude, I don't, they want to hug me and shit. I'm like, just back off. I secretly suspected that they were on some kind of a drug. And I was like, well, I don't, I've done a lot of drugs. There's got to be something under the radar. Because if it came up, I gave it a shot at. I had a psychedelic phase and all that shit. But I knew that they were doing well. But like I told you, like as a kid, my whole life, I always felt like there was something wrong with me. I didn't know what it was. But I just suspected that there was something wrong with me. And everyone that I came in contact with, they always looked to the way that I always wanted to feel, but I couldn't feel that way. You know what I mean? Like it was just a strange, I never felt like them, the way that they looked. I wanted to, because they looked like they're happy. Because I could be around people that loved me. Bone cold, clean and sober. I'm just not in the right place. I've never been able to do that. So drugs were the ones that set me free. And it's one of the things that I took with me. I have a couple bottoms actually. I began to, I went to treatment. This second time around, I was 30, I was about 39, 38 years old. And I tried, so what happened was, is I put the drugs down, um, and I moseyed through life, drinking occasionally. And I told myself that I wasn't going to do drugs, but every time I ended up drinking, I always ended up doing drugs. Um, and I would have these stints of being able to, because I never ended up on the streets. I always had a job. I always, I was always able to make some kind of a living off what I wanted to do. As like, just like I said, as a kid, it wasn't that I it wasn't that I wanted to do drugs. I wanted to make them too. Um, and I found the select few people that ended up uh, doing what they love to do as well. And I don't know why, everything in my life that I've ever done has always been addict and alcoholically. Um, After I got into trouble when I was a kid, what happened was, is I decided I needed to find something in my life, um, that kept me out of trouble, that I could go to and stay away from drugs and alcohol, partying, everything. And so what happened was, is I fell in love, um, with snowboarding and skateboarding. That's my jam. I started skateboarding. It was a thing for me to actually start. It was a cheap, skateboarding has always been a cheap sport. Skateboards they've been like $40 for like 30 years or something. So I've always been something that I gravitated towards because I didn't have a lot of money. And I got into snowboarding early on. And something in my head told me that if I was just doing that all the time, that I would stay out of trouble. And so I dedicated my life to snowboarding. And at the time, I was living in Spokane, and there was a couple snowboard shops there. I didn't have a lot of money for gear, but I knew that if I dove all the way in and did this all the time, it seemed like in my previous years I'd stay out of trouble. So that's what I did. I rode for a snowboard shop, worked at a snowboard shop, and then I snowboarded all day, every day that I could. And that's one of the reasons why it brought me down to the gorge. I wanted to be in a place where I could snowboard all year round. And Timberline was the place. Um, and so I moved down here in 97, 98, right after I graduated high school, barely. Um, and as the years went on, there was a good span of years where I was staying out of trouble. Um, and I stayed away from partying, for the most part. Uh, but I lived on the mountain. It's where I lived most of my life. Uh, and for about a good maybe 6 or 7 years, and then I got hurt. As most snowboarders will tell you, that ages you pretty quickly. Um, and so I went to a doctor, and doctor prescribed some pills. And I'm an adult now, right? I ain't no kid. Uh, why can't I have some oxys? You know what I mean? It's my doctor. What could it possibly hurt? You know, not to mention it's fancy heroin. It's not street heroin. That's completely different. That's not, you know what I mean? That's in the past. I don't need that anymore. I'll get some good, clean. It's from a doctor. How bad can it really be? This is what I'm telling myself. Uh, and this is, I mean, if like I just, I, it, took not even a month between doing that to going back to my old behaviors, and I'm shooting within a couple of months. It's so crazy how you can go a span of years and go right back to where you started. I mean, like that. It was the most. To this day, it fucking baffles me how that worked in my life. And then I was off and running. No more snowboarding. No more skateboarding. We're back to running and gunning. I'm back. I find my crew. This is what we do. You know what I mean? It's like, it's so funny being an addict, and then it's like you got like a good 5 or 6 years of staying out of trouble, and then it's like, well, I don't know where anybody's at. You find your people, you find them real quick, and so that just led me down that spiral again. So my house, I mean, my house turned right into a trap house. And I remember my son at the time was, gosh, how old was he? He might have been like 5 or 6 or something, 6 or 7, I forgot. But I had the cops show up to my house because apparently when you don't pay rent for 6 months, they don't let you live there, which I thought was a little insensitive at the time. But I remember, so as an addict, you have these looks from your children. And that cop showed up and he said, you got 30 minutes, to get your shit and get out. And I remember the look on my son's face. It wasn't like a mad look. It's like a disappointing look, that look of just disappointment. I fucking hate that look. I'll never, as long as I live, I'll never be able to get that look out of my head. And I remember being like, how the fuck did I get here again? After such a short amount of time, how did my life become so unmanageable? Because without the drugs and alcohol, if I set my mind to something, I thought I would, I could do it. I was very, very self-driven. But when it came to drugs, I just couldn't do it. It ruined me every time. And it's crazy, just like the judge, right? I thought that would deter me from doing drugs, but it didn't. Even the look from my kid of that desperation. We ended up moving in to a friend's house, and we just kept going with it. And what really came to head is when they got for my wife and her family. They stepped in, and they knew what was going on, and they saw the way that we were living, and they had an intervention with us. And I didn't want to get clean. Like, I knew I should have. I knew I needed to. But I don't know how to live. How do you live like this? How do you live without that, my best friend? It's always been there for me. But I knew that there was no other way out. And I remember very clearly towards the end, I knew that I couldn't live with drugs and alcohol. I know for a fact I couldn't live without it. And I remember I'd be driving around, and I still rode bikes at this time because motorcycles was a big part of my life as well. But I remember riding around and looking like maybe I can just veer off the road. Maybe I'm kind of looking for outs. I don't want to be here anymore. I don't have any other options here. And I remember thinking to myself, like, maybe if I'm going to do it, like, let's do it right, But I didn't even have the balls to, like, take my own life. And I don't mean to laugh, but it's like, if you're a real addict, like, you get this. Like, I can't live with it or without it. And now what's the fucking use? Why even be here, And that was the perfect place for me to be when they had that intervention and they brought me down to Eugene for treatment. Because when I went down there was a little bit of me like, okay, this probably ain't gonna work. You know what I mean? I'm gonna give it a shot. This probably ain't gonna work. But I don't have any other options here. I can't even kill myself, right? You know, my life is burnt to the ground once again. I'm almost 40 years old. Let's give it a shot. And I remember I went to Serenity Lane down in Eugene, fancy place, good food. I haven't had real food in a while. But they let you out to go to meetings after a week. And I was like, well, whatever, yeah, I'll fucking go. I know this whole, the whole recovery program. I know all about it. They're all happy and lucky and grateful for every goddamn thing. And I'll never forget that van ride to my first meeting. Because everyone in the van was really, they were like, because it's a big meeting, it's a men's meeting, and they were really scared that they're gonna get called on because kind of rough around the edge guys, and I remember that van ride because I wasn't terrified of any of that. My main fear, my number one fear, is this shit ain't gonna work. It's not gonna work, And the most incredible thing happened to me, and I've been blessed for almost 8 years in recovery, because at that very first meeting, as soon as I walked in there and I started looking around at all the other men, I had this weird inclination like this might actually work. Before anyone even spoke, I was like, this is, I don't know. I was still skeptical, but I remember sitting down on the front row, and as people stood up and started talking, some interesting things started to happen to me. I don't know anybody there. I've never met anyone before in my life, and they started talking to me like they knew me. And it was the most profound, because my entire life, like I said, I was a tense kid, and I've always looked to gravitate towards a group of people where I could call myself home. Never been there. Never had it, ever. And for the first time in my life, I actually think that I'm supposed to be there, because these people started talking to me like they fucking knew me, which was kind of freaked me out in a way. Because I was like, how do they know me? Because you get here and you think you're all special. Because I was like, oh yeah, they know me, but I'm the special case, But then people would get up and be like, yeah, you're not special. You don't know shit, I had some rough dudes, and it was awesome. I had a dude throw a book at me, and he's like, if you want to live, fucking read this. And I was like, all right. Another dude came up to me and put his hand on my shoulder, and he goes, he's like, are you desperate and are you alone? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, fucking good. And he walked off. And I was like, what the, I grew up with rough around the edge guys. And that's just the way that I gravitate towards those guys. Because I don't sugarcoat me. You know what I mean? I need guys to tell me straight up, you want to live? Do this, Because I came into that meeting like someone was after me. I'll never forget that. I lose sight of that after 8 years in recovery, because there's a lot of things in my life throughout my recovery where I feel macho about. But that first meeting, dude, when I walked in there, man, it felt like someone was after me to kill me. And that's a really important aspect as a newcomer. And I'm grateful for that. And I've never left, ever. I am so grateful that the rooms of recovery do not allow, they have their traditions in place that don't allow outside things to come to, to come in, which is fantastic. I have a different take on my spirituality, and I do believe that there is a spiritual shift in the world that a lot of people are tapping into. Um, this is going to get a little crazy for some, but the world has like a frequency to it, and that frequency, it tends to grow as the years go on. And I believe that when you come into the rooms of recovery, it's very suggested that you find a higher power or find some kind of spiritual entity that you can call on when times of trouble. Um, and it's difficult for me to say what goes on in the rest of the world, but I do know for myself that when I allowed myself to be open-minded about all forms of a higher power, everything in my life started to change. And that spiritual connection is what I look for everywhere I go. And really is where meditation comes in, because that's where I allow the creator that I found in the rooms of recovery to talk to me. But there's a problem, because that spiritual entity will allow me to run the show at any time. It's what you call a gentleman. He does not intrude. He does not interrupt. And he doesn't butt in. I have to allow myself to remove all the things that are blocking me from it. And I didn't know that when I first got in recovery, because I thought that if I just prayed a bunch and went to a bunch of meetings, that it would just show itself to me. What is so amazing about these programs of recovery is it allows you to delayer all the things about you that you don't like and that it doesn't like, so that your higher power can move you where it wants you to be. That's what it's all about. And the guys that don't like God, buckle up. I'm not sitting here because I ride motorcycles and go to a bunch of meetings. You know what I mean? And the only way that I know how to be really free is to allow my creator that I found in the rooms of recovery in that first meeting, that's morphed into all kinds of different things. But once I allow that to work in my life, that's really where the spiritual progress begins. And it's where I start to make a change in my life, because that's what we do. We need to change the way that we think, not just what we do, how we behave. That's because we're addicts. It's not called a relapse if you haven't recovered, right? I can't stand people that say, "Oh, I relapsed. Relapse is part of my story." I'm like, no, you're an addict. You're an addict. That's what we do. We use. I didn't just wake up one day like, well, maybe I won't use today. I used every day. Thought about it all day, every day. And for me to sit here on multiple occasions, go throughout my day and not even think about it once is a miracle. And it's because I adopted this way to live, and we do it one day at a time. I think the spiritual world, I believe, is evolving with all the chaos and all the shit that's going on and all the division. I believe on the other end of that coin, there's this whole other realm of the spirit world that's actually growing higher, and there's more of a consciousness that's going along the people. But the problem is you have to tap into it to get it. Because I see a lot of people that are spiritually sound, man, they're free. You ever been to a convention or anything, and you sit next to like the old timers that actually are like they got a gangster program. these old broads that like, they got 50, 60, 40 years of clean time. You could just sit next to them. They don't even have to say anything. And they just radiate this like power about them because they're so free, because they adopt this way of live. It's incredible. Yes, actually, that's a great question. Triggers. Um, I have to. I, I know it sounds really cheesy, but when there's that whole halt thing, hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Holy shit, those are not when I'm hungry and I'm tired. You can talk to my friends. I'm not in a very good spot. I try to take really good care of myself today, health wise. Um, it's you know telling a guy that's got 7.5 years in recovery about his triggers is probably different than talking to some guy that's got 30 days. You know what I mean? Um, but I do believe that I have to be very aware of where my head is in certain times when I talk to people. An example would be like one of my big triggers is when I can feel myself being kind of spiritually bankrupt when I start becoming more right about things, and I'm going throughout my day, and there's a lot of judging going on. You know what I mean? Especially when I'm like, I've got some angst with me, and I just kind of people need to get straightened out. They irritate me. They cut me off in traffic. You know what I mean? The gas prices are too high, and this attendant ain't doing his job, and this person ain't doing what he's supposed to be doing, and they need to get straightened out. I know what they need, right? I know what they need to do because I know what the solution is. When I'm in an area in my mind like that, it's not a good place to be. Like the other day, I stop at a stop sign, and here's an addict on the corner. He's loaded, you know, got this sign, and he's got garbage everywhere in the corner, and he's being loud and he's screaming and shit, and I'm irritated. I'm like, this guy needs a job. You know what I mean? I'm sitting here and I'm judging this dude. I'm sitting in my I'm check this out. I'm sitting in my fancy Jeep with heated seats, going to my fancy car or my fancy job, and here I am judging this dude for what? You know what I mean? It's just like that's me, dude. That's me right there. When I can look around at a lot of people and I can see myself in them, because a lot of times what happens is I'll go to a stoplight or a stop sign and I'll see someone like that all the time, and I'll just say a little prayer. God, I hope they find us. You know, God, I hope they can find this way to live someday. Hope they can reach their bottom and still make it. Um, that's when I'm in a good spot. Those are my triggers. They're mental, right? I don't go by places, and I mean, I ride for a clean and sober motorcycle club, and we see people shooting all. I mean, we see all kinds of shit, right? That doesn't trigger me anymore. I know my life. It's the spiritual change in my life that allowed that to happen. It wasn't because I went to a lot of meetings. Well, it was in the beginning, but once I allowed my spiritual higher power to work in my life, all that changed. But those are big triggers for me now, because I need to be aware of how I look at people. Because I'm a junkie, and I'm a criminal. You know what I mean? I still have criminal behavior all the time. It's like being in a car with the in neutral and you're just flooring the gas. I don't. I think about it. I don't do it. You know, but there's also triggers as far as the shitty part is being an addict and an alcoholic. when all the alcohol and drugs are gone, and now there's all kinds of shit. My weekly routine, a lot of meetings still. I have so I don't really, I'm a big advocate for service work in the rooms of recovery. And that ranges, and I don't mean just going to meetings. That's not service work. Um, I mean, having a home group, be accountable, chair meetings. Right now, I am District 14's correction chairman, so I take meetings into our local jail here on Wednesdays and Thursdays. I have we do men and women, um, and it is we do juveniles. The Dalles is actually a pretty cool jail. It's one of the first jails to house juveniles and adults, and they allowed us to come in there, and so we do a Wednesday night meeting and a Thursday. Juveniles is on Wednesday and adults on Thursday nights. So we go in there, we do a meeting in there, and I do right now. I probably do maybe 4 meetings a month in there. I have some other guys. We kind of do the spirit of rotation. I don't physically, or I don't have a home group at this moment, but I kind of jump around a lot to different meetings, and but I probably 3 or 4 meetings a week. I'd say it's the norm. There's a prayer that called the set aside prayer that I've been saying every morning from the moment I got clean and sober. And it basically is a prayer that asks my Creator to help me set aside everything that's blocking me from Him. It basically says, my Creator, help me set aside everything I think I know about myself, others, and my own recovery for a new experience in you, a new experience in myself, a new experience in others, and a much needed new experience in my own recovery. Thank you for my life. I've been saying that for a minute. Actually, this is kind of funny. When I first got clean, I didn't, we don't like God here. We're kind of God fighters in the beginning. And I asked my sponsor, I was like, hey, he goes, I want you to get on your knees and I want you to ask your Creator to help you stay sober. I'm like, yeah, I don't really get on my knees. And he said, well, I don't give a shit. He goes, do me a favor. He goes, kick your shoes under the bed at night. He goes, in the morning, you got to get down there anyways to get your shoes. So when you're down there, just ask your Creator. He said, to whom it may concern, can you help me stay clean and sober for today? That's all I would say in the morning. And I got to tell you, some weird shit started to happen once I started to do that. To whom it may concern, help me to stay sober and clean. And everything kind of like the building blocks, right? Open-mindedness, right? Honesty, the willingness to actually like adopt a different way to live. It was incredible. I pray every morning. Sometimes, I pray throughout the day. I'm not the guy that sits in a lotus position for 20 minutes, 20 hours. You know what I mean? I'm just not that dude. I own a Harley Davidson. So I don't know if you've ever ridden a motorcycle, but it pretty much forces you to meditate. I think you can learn everything from recovery from riding a motorcycle, but that's because I'm narrow-minded. That's meditation for me. I ride a lot of motorcycles. I ride all the time. We ride all year round. But back to your question, the meditation thing and the praying is really big to allow myself to become closer to my Creator. The meetings. I also have 4 sponsees right now that are clean and sober. I've been blessed in that arena as far as sponsoring people. I've sponsored probably 30 men. 4 of them are dead. Every one of them gone back out, except for 4, and that's pretty common. you start sponsoring people, and that's pretty common occurrence. I didn't think I was actually cut out for it, but I talked to my sponsor. I've talked to a lot of other guys, and it's baffling to actually sponsor 4 guys that died. You know, all of them OD'd. Actually, one of them went all the way through the whole process, went back out and got loaded, which I didn't think was possible, but it is. And watching watching them go back out is horrific. But I got to stay clean and sober through the whole process, and I know why I am. You know, and the game's this whole. I don't know. I shouldn't say that, but the game has changed from when I got clean. There's different products out there that are what's the word, potent now. You don't make it. It's, you know what I mean? You don't just go out for a weekend and you get loaded for a couple of days. It's like with all the new products out there, it's like you're getting loaded, you're done. You know? Thank God I missed that window. Just barely, just got clean right before that whole window. So like I said, I sponsored a lot of guys, and one of them I'll never forget. He was a priest. He was a Catholic priest, and which was baffling to me. He was an older gentleman, and he came to me and he asked me if I could help him with this process and go through the steps because he couldn't stop drinking. And I was like, definitely, you know. I didn't know that he was a priest in the beginning, but as we went through this process, he told me about his life basically, and it was the most incredible thing because this older gentleman, spent his entire life learning about God. He knew everything about the Bible. He knew all the verses. He knew this guy prayed more than in one day than I would pray in months, you know. And we went through this process, and he was actually just as baffled as I was because he had all the faith in the world that he knew about God, and that God was working in his life, but that guy drank himself to death. And I think about him from time to time because, see, there's some misconceptions in the rooms of recovery that I thought that because I'm here and I'm learning, right? I'm learning about my disease and about what not to do, what to do. I thought it was enough for me to just have faith in something. But for some reason, it's not if you really want the benefits of what this place has to offer, you have to be able to feel that higher power working in your life. You have to really be able to feel it. Faith is a good start. I used to say that faith isn't enough, but for this guy, it seemed like he knew so much about it that he became the I know guy, right? This is what we talked about earlier. I got into a place in recovery where, like, because you come in here and you're broken and you start to learn some things, and then you start to really realize that your life becomes grand and it becomes amazing, and you start to get some things back in your life, and then you kind of start to turn into this I know guy now. I know what you need, you know? It's the same thing about sponsoring drug and alcohol counselors. They are horrific people to sponsor. And I'll say that on YouTube. They become the I know guys. And they're very difficult to allow to give them suggestions on because the only thing that I know is my experience. And so that when I sponsor someone, I give them suggestions on what I did. And maybe that will work for you or it won't, you right? But this guy, who was a man of the cloth, he was not allowing to, you know, as we went through this process of basically uncovering, discovering, and discarding the things that are blocking you from your higher power. He wasn't allowing to do this. He wasn't, and I think really what it came down to, he wasn't his past caught up with him. He wouldn't look at it. And we've all done bad things. And I think that's what the blessing is of the rooms of recovery is that it allows you to look at those things and make them right as much as you can. To move past them as much as horrific as they are. And at the same time, not only look at them and move past them, but allow them for you to show another person that they can do this as well, you know? And so I'm still baffled by that guy, that he went back out and died of alcoholism, which it's the roughest way to go. That is the most horrific way to die, for sure. I guess the people that are new, even the people that are old, I feel like when you come here, it's almost overwhelming to all the stuff that you've done, all the guilt and all the shame that you have. I guess it's take a break and just realize, like, when you come here, like, it's going to be a process. And my advice is, don't fucking tiptoe. This is my experience. Dive all the way in. Do what everyone tells you to do. Even if it sounds crazy, you should probably do it. Someone told me that, and it's still, to this day, it's fitting, because when you get here, some shit's gonna sound crazy, and you should probably do it. Allow yourself to go easy on yourself. Take a break. Go to lots of meetings. I've never been to a meeting. I've always told newcomers that meeting makers make it, and there's something to say about that. I believe in the beginning, go to lots of meetings. I had an old timer tell me one time, go to meetings like you drank and you used. That stuck with me for a long time. I went to meetings like I drank and I used every day. I never missed a meeting, mostly sometimes two. The only thing that I can really say to newcomers is dig in. Don't think that just because you're here, that things are going to get better, because sometimes they might get worse before they get better. I've been through a lot of things in my recovery. I've buried both of my parents, buried a lot of sponsees, relationships problems, money problems. I did it all in the rooms of recovery, and it saved my life, because we get to do it together, And I guarantee you come in here, it don't matter what you've been through, you're going to find someone that's been through this even worse. I was at a meeting the other day about a lady. She was sharing. I couldn't believe it. She was clean and sober, talking about she had 2 of her children that OD'd, and she's up there. And I went there with some fucking problems, you know what I mean? And I left that meeting and I was like, you know what I mean? There's always someone that's got it way worse. And there's always someone that you can connect with. And then the only other thing I can say is, those things that you told yourself that you would never, ever tell anybody, the things that you're most ashamed about, the things that you told yourself that you would take to the grave, I can promise you, if you come here and you share that with another in confidence, it can save their life. That's been my story, for sure. And it's incredible. Your worst things that you hate about yourself will become your greatest assets in recovery. Yeah, shout out to Solution MC. So we have 3 chapters: Portland chapter, Salem chapter, Grants Pass. Solution has been around since '93. Our sole purpose is aiding our brothers and sisters in recovery. And we ride motorcycles like lunatics around. So if you have enough if you can catch us while we're at a gas station drinking Red Bulls, please, any one of my brothers, there's over 100 of us. Grab one of us. If you don't know where to go or what to do, you can look us up on Solution MC, our website. If you see any of us out, we hit meetings. We're on the road. Grab one of us. Talk to us. We'd love to talk to you, because it's really it's where we it's our sole purpose is to help the next addict, man, the alcoholic. We really want people to get this, and a lot of people don't know where to go. They just don't know where to go, and don't be afraid. I know we might look like big bikers, but we're not. We're just a bunch of softies that found recovery. I send out prayers to all those that are watching this, and you don't know if you can do this or not. I can tell you right now, it's worth it. Everything in my life, I have a life today that I used to dream about. I really do. And it's all because I started coming here, not knowing what was going to happen. And if you can reach out, pick up that phone, and just call someone, and make your way here and get your network going, we can all meet you, because there's millions of us that have recovered. And it's guys like Chris that are starting a new wave of spiritual things, and I think it's really cool. So thanks for having me, man.
You're welcome.
Yeah.